So it's not a matter of if a recession will happen, it's a matter of when. And when it does happen, most people will not be prepared. Except for you, because in this video, you'll learn how to prepare, but also ways to benefit from a recession. How do recessions affect you as the individual? Really, it comes down to job loss. So when a recession hits, what usually skyrockets is unemployment. So if we look at 2008, unemployment jumped up to about 10%, and that affected around 9 million people. And just for context, unemployment currently, April 2025, we're at about 4% unemployment. So it was double in 2008. Now you might be thinking 90% of people were not unemployed. So how's that bad? Well, it turns out there is this domino effect. Imagine someone loses their job, and when they lose a job, what do they lose? They lose their income. And their income is needed to pay rent, mortgage, maybe a car payment, food, insurance. And on the receiving end of all of these things are businesses, other people. So there is this domino effect, right? Everyone is affected. And then you pair that with people getting scared of all these headlines, and now people are saving more of their money. And when they save more money, that's less the economy is stimulated, and boom, recession. It is all connected. So if you lose your job, you lose your income. Unfortunately, life doesn't become free after that. We still have to pay for our stuff. So it's more important than ever that we have an emergency fund. This is not a special account. It's basically just cash sitting aside for emergencies. And we want to keep this in accounts like high yield savings accounts and money market funds. We want to avoid banks like Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Navy Federal. We want to earn as much interest on our cash as possible. And the large institutions, they do not do that. Now, according to Bankrate, about 44% of Americans can cover a $1,000 emergency expense from their savings, which means the vast majority of Americans cannot. So when a recession happens and there is job loss, these people are going to be screwed, unfortunately, which is why we need a solid 6 months worth of expenses. So take your monthly expenses, strip out all the luxuries, right? Eating out, food deliveries, video game skins, strip all that out. What is the essential number? Let's take that, multiply it by 6, and that is how much we should have saved for emergencies. And I know some people are going to say, I can't even save $1,000. I have nothing in savings. How am I supposed to get to 6 months? Well, first of all, 6 months is a good number. And if you're self-employed or in a field where there's not a good job outlook, meaning your sector's shrinking, meaning you'll have a harder time finding a job, you're gonna need more than 6 months. But anyway, here are some ways that you can start building that fund. Most people, they have no idea where their money is going. And this is thousands of people I've spoken to over comments, DMs, coaching calls. No one has their expenses written out, the majority of people at least. So the first thing you need to do, open up a spreadsheet for free, Google Sheets, whatever, write down all of your monthly expenses, okay? Understand where your money is going. After we have that, we want to focus on cutting whatever we can. And we want to start with the most expensive stuff first. That's gonna be housing, transportation, food. So if you're living on your own, you're having a hard time, move back home, live with a roommate, make a sacrifice there. It's gonna be worth it long term. Other things are transportation, right? We live in a time where the average car payment is around $742. Meanwhile, the median income is less than $60,000 per year. Then there's food, and then you can go for the luxuries like food delivery, subscriptions, stuff like that. Now, the next thing we wanna do is we wanna hold off on expensive purchases. These are things like cars, vacations, furniture, electronics. So avoid upgrading your graphics card now. We direct all the money we save from cutting expenses, all the money we currently have saved for those expensive purchases, and throw them into the emergency fund. Now, a few other things we can do is pick up a side hustle. Now, this is temporary, okay? So let's pick up a side hustle to build up that fund, build that financial security, and then just understand that it's not a career. Now, the next thing we want to do to prepare for a recession is tackle high interest debt. If you get laid off, it would really, really suck to have to spend money on high interest debt like credit cards. Because according to the Federal Reserve, the average US credit card APR interest rate is over 20%. And just for context, the US stock market has returned about 7 or 8% after inflation. So we need to lock in and focus on paying off high interest debt, like credit cards, really anything over 6%. But absolutely, credit cards should be the top priority. Because if you keep that debt around, if you invest that money instead, you're simply going to lose money because the interest rates are higher than what you'll earn from the stock market. Now, the most common debt paying strategy is going to be the avalanche and snowball method. Choose whichever one you like, but honestly, I like the avalanche method where you focus on the highest interest rate debt first and then work your way down. Now, this next tip to prepare is going to sound kind of crazy, but prepare to be laid off. We want to have our resume updated right now so you'll be ready to apply to new jobs. Because everyone else, they're going to be in panic mode. They're going to be spamming an old resume to every single job out there. Meanwhile, you are going to have a fresh resume tailored to every single job you apply to. And yes, we don't want to be spamming the same resume to every single job. We want to tailor the resume to the specific jobs we're applying to. Now, on top of that, we want to keep our skills up to date. This is not the time to be complacent like everyone else. So if you're in your career and you're like, yeah, I'm just chilling, I'll learn what I need to learn, I'm just kind of just chilling here. That is the opposite that we want to do. We live in a capitalistic society that rewards value. If you're not providing value in the form of services or products, you'll be left behind. In-demand skills will help you land a new job much faster than everyone else. So it's great to adopt a lifelong learning mentality. Some hot skills now are going to be AI, social media marketing, which I can attest to, sales, and IT. Obviously, we want to do some research to see what sectors are growing. We don't want to learn skills that are going to be less valuable in the future. Now, equally important, and I can't stress this enough, but we need to be networking our asses off. Now, unless you already have a strong network, all good. But if you don't, here's why it's important. So back in 2010, this was during the Great Recession, during that housing bubble crisis. I was in college and I was searching for a job. I was having the hardest time because, right, unemployment was up, companies weren't hiring, it was a bad time. I went to Best Buy because they were holding a career fair or job fair. When I got there, it was packed. Everyone was trying to get a job. One of the main reasons I got the job was because I knew someone who worked there and they helped put in a good word. Obviously, I still interviewed and still did decently well for the time, so that also helped. But the fact that someone was able to talk to a manager on my behalf and say, hire this person, I've worked with them, I know them, they're going to be a good hire. That was immensely helpful. And that only happened because I was networking. I knew people. So if you have a strong network, recession hits, you lose your job, you can tap into your network to help you find a new job. Okay, cool. So those are 3 ways you can play defense when it comes to preparing for a recession. But what about offense? How do we benefit from a recession? Here's how. By far, the most important tip here is do not panic. Everyone and their mothers are going to panic. They're going to get emotional. They're going to make emotional decisions. And that is a guaranteed way to lose money. One way we can remove the emotion from the equation is by sticking to a plan. And every financial plan needs to utilize automation for savings and investing. So for example, make sure you have direct deposit set up through your employer. We do not want to be getting a check, taking a picture of the check, and manually putting money in checking and savings. We don't want to do that, okay? So have direct deposit, have it automatically send money, whatever you can save, to your high yield savings. Remember, we want to avoid Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Navy Federal. High yield savings, money market fund. I have a link to the one that I use down below if you want to check it out. Once we automate the savings, we want to have another piece of automation to automate our investments. So take money from your high yield savings, whatever you can comfortably afford, and have that invested into your Roth IRA, or maybe you have a 401k through your employer. That should already be taken care of. Now, I want to emphasize the news, social media, they're gonna make it seem like it's the end of the world, and you're gonna want to panic and change your plan, but you need to stick with it. I know it's gonna be challenging, but the people that will benefit most are the people that stick to their plan. If you don't already have a plan, now you have some notes based on the previous section, but we also have a free money guide you can download below. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe because again, we teach nerds how to be rich nerds. Best way to benefit from a recession is by investing, or I should say continuing investing. Now, we don't want to invest, like I mentioned before, until we've taken care of the emergency fund and our high interest debt. A natural response to a stock market crash is to panic and sell. That is how people lose money. Now, unless you're invested in some risky stocks, something like Tesla, avoid selling. And let me prove to you exactly why you should avoid that. This is an article by Fidelity called 3 Reasons to Stay Invested Right Now. And the image I want to show you here is this graph. If you feel like panicking, the first thing I want you to do is zoom out. Pinch your phone, zoom out. And we can see here, dating back to 1980 all the way to 2024, the stock market as a whole looks awesome. Look at this trend, it's beautiful. This is how wealth is created, investing long term here. But the sort of price to admission is these dips. We have Black Monday, a war here, war here. We had a financial crisis here. We had COVID-19, another war here. So there are dips along the way. We can see the trend. But what if you give into the panic, you give into your emotions, and you sell like everyone else? Let me show you how much money you could lose. So this graph right here shows $10,000 invested in the stock market from 1988 to 2024. And we can see down here at the bottom, if you missed the best 50 days of the stock market, you would have only made around $40,000. If you missed the best 30 days, $88,000. If you missed even the best 5 days of the stock market, $330,000. But if you continued investing through all of these dips, you would have made over $500,000. And you would have made even more if you continued investing every single month. Because after every single one of these dips, we saw significant growth in the stock market. Now, since 1945, the stock market had recovered on average around 17.5% after each recession. That is big money. So please, please, please stay invested. One piece of advice you're gonna see online is buy the dip, right? Everyone's gonna say, buy the dip, buy the dip, buy the dip. So the stock market crashes, everyone's like, oh my God, stocks are on sale. Let's buy to try to make money. This is not a good strategy. strategy. Let me tell you why. Well, number one, you can buy the dip, it could dip again. You buy the dip, it could dip again. So you're trying to buy down to the bottom here. In other words, you're trying to time the market, which we know doesn't work. But instead, you try to buy here, you try to buy here, and you miss the bottom, right? Not a good strategy. And it's also stressful. Don't take my word for it. This is an article by Charles Schwab. Schwab manages about $1 trillion or so of assets for people. And they have an article called Does Timing the Market Work? So in their analysis, they have multiple investors here. They have someone who has perfect timing, which is impossible, but they had it here just for context. They had someone who invested immediately, didn't wait. As soon as they came up on some cash, they invested. And they had someone with generally bad timing. But then we have someone here who stayed in cash, just hoping, just waiting for that crash, and they just held their cash until that happened, but never really took action. So this person made the least amount of money, obviously, but the most interesting thing is the person who invested immediately did almost as well as someone who can perfectly time the market, which, like we mentioned, is impossible. If someone says buy the dip, this is bad advice. Please don't follow it. But if you happen to come up on some cash, maybe from a bonus from work, maybe you sold some stuff and you want to buy the dip, stock market is down, perfect. That's totally fine. This is the strategy right here. But don't be this person here. We don't want to wait for the perfect time to buy. We just don't know, right? So going back to this chart here, let's say COVID happened, everything crashed, and we're like, this is the bottom, it's going to go lower, I'm going to wait. And then boom, shortly after, stock market recovered. You missed out on that. And then it went higher, and then higher, and then higher, and then higher. So you missed out on all these gains. And just to give you some more proof here, if you've been waiting for the past 5 years to invest, trying to find the perfect moment, you missed out on almost doubling your money. This is the stock market in the past 5 years. You technically missed out on almost doubling your money. But what do we invest in? That's the question we get all the time. We want to avoid individual stocks like the Teslas, like the Apples. Instead, we get a little bit of everything. And we can do that through index funds. Index funds allow you to invest in a single stock and get exposure to hundreds, even thousands of companies here in the US, international, or both. When it comes to investing, that's pretty much it. We prioritize index funds. We want to continue to invest no matter what happens, either weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever cadence you want. And let's try to prioritize the tax-advantaged accounts like 401ks and Roth IRAs. The last way we can take advantage of a recession is by taking advantage of business and career opportunities. So in previous sections, we talked about keeping your skills up to date, keeping your resume up to date, networking. The reason why this is also important is because when a recession hits, we know that unemployment goes up, job losses go down, opportunities go down, companies aren't hiring. But when a recession is ending, as we're coming out of a recession, opportunities arise here. And you will be prepared, if you follow the advice, to take advantage of these. So while many other people are going to be going back to school, trying to work on themselves, you're already up to date, you're good to go, and you can take advantage of any opportunities you see. And this also applies to starting your own business. You're going to see people that are going to be trying to learn new skills, maybe beef up their resumes. There will be opportunities beyond just the normal W-2 employment to take advantage here. Now, the last and final thing I want you to take advantage of is this video right here, where I teach you how I went from $0 to $1 million in 10 years and how you can do it faster.